Generic pre-show music selection number 1.
So we just chill out back here and wait. I'm playing with my mic if you can't tell.
Our power could grow tremendously.
Lee, you are muted, my friend.
I am muted. Well, I'm not muted now. Yeah. So that was non-copyrighted selection number 1. Here's number 2 to hear. The next minute. See how people filter in. Woohoo! That was energizing. No time. Woohoo! I like this one. I know you guys will love it. Let's go ahead and kick this graphic off. People need to see what's going on. Hey, what's up, everybody? And now we have 1 minute left until BowtieUP Live officially begins. So let's kick it off with a song that my friend Mark Youngerman wrote just for us. Here we go.
I do enjoy the music, but we definitely need something in the downtime.
Absolutely. So what's going on, everybody? This is Leroy Copy Branding, and this is BowtieUP Live, along with my co-host. Go at it. What's going on?
Hi there, I'm Alex.
Yes, he is. And our wonderful and esteemed guest down below, Mary Henderson. Mary, how are you today?
How are you, Lee? Hi, Alex. Oh, excuse me. I'm great. I'm really great. For 6:30 in the morning, I'm sensational.
Well, wonderful. We appreciate that you've gotten up early to join us. And
Absolutely.
if I know you, you're already up and have half a dozen things done by now anyway. So this is just no big deal for you. Is that right?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So it's absolutely wonderful to have you on the show. For those who don't know you, could you please give us a quick rundown of who you are, what you do for people, and why the heck this is so important?
Well, I'm Mary Henderson. I live in Australia. I live in Melbourne in Australia, and I specialize in personal branding. I commercialize personal brands, actually. That's what I really do. And I help coaches, consultants, business owners, corporate executives who are actually transitioning out of corporate into I help them digitize their knowledge and commercialize their brand so they can be authorities and own their niche. That's what I do. And why is this important? Well, I think that it's just nice to have a conversation, Lee, and just spread the word of goodness and have just an open dialogue about conversations that we wouldn't normally have on LinkedIn. You can't really have a really long conversation on a post. I mean, you can, but this is different. Mm-hmm. So it's just nice to be around good company.
Absolutely. And we're so grateful for our guests and for our audience and for our co-hosts who hopefully have working audio now. Check.
Was my mic not working before?
Yet. Where is it? No.
Still not working?
Yeah, it's working now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I keep seeing my mic button, but I don't know if it's actually working or not.
I get confused.
You're changing. Are you going through a second puberty?
Sometimes. I am, yes. I've decided to mature.
Oh, my goodness.
My voice is now lower.
Oh.
Unfortunately, sometimes it reverses.
And then I
that's just no. Okay. So
you're not the only one with cool voice effects now, boy.
You gotta go. Well, no, you gotta go back to the. You gotta go back to the low one now because somebody set up my button for today, and my Stream Deck, and in these new there's a new panel of buttons, and in there's one that says female orgasm.
What in the world is the female
we're gonna find out what this
orgasm,
is all about. You can
tell us for the audience that doesn't know.
Okay. So I get the Stream Deck, we get these buttons, and each button does a sound or makes something happen on the thing. And today there's one that pops up that says female orgasm. So we got to see what that's all about, right?
Of course.
So here we go. Are you ready?
Yes.
Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down.
Yeah, that's only been around for about 2
Can we
years.
sing as well?
That was classic.
Rick Rolled on this episode of BowtieUP Live. All right, Alex, would you like to pick a voice and stop the show and say hello so that we can get on with this little shindig?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for kindly giving me the time to stop the show and say hello to some of our wonderful people out in the audience. To go through them in painstakingly slow order as a chipmunk, I'm here today saying hello to Josh Kruger, joining us first on LinkedIn, Carla Rowley, also joining us on LinkedIn, Chris, Gary, and Gina. How is it going, everybody? Y'all are phenomenal people. Thank you for joining in. We very much appreciate that. And
welcome
to BowtieUP Live.
It's wonderful to see you all today.
Is that good?
That was magnificent, Alex.
I have one of those too.
Simply magnificent.
All right, are we done with this? We're wasting Mary. So she's like, I got up for what?
I actually love it. This is actually, believe it or not, I know that I sort of look a bit serious, but this is totally my sense of humor. You do realize that, right? Those,
Yes,
like
I
a
was
little bit of
banking
Rick
on it.
Astley goes a long way with me. You do realize that.
Yes. Like, totally counting on it. And for some reason, people show up and watch it too.
That's it.
So I'm expecting, I'm supposing they're expecting at some point that we're going to get to something resembling a point with this whole shindig, right? So branding, I mean, and it goes beyond branding. I mean, you essentially build identities that people's target audience and customers and clients can relate to.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy task because I see a lot of people who say, oh, well, I can help you scale your business and your riches and your blah, 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 whatever. But I haven't seen too many people who can actually do it. So, I mean, what does that mean to you? I mean, like, where are most people falling short?
I think that a lot of people, first of all, I think that a lot of people are looking for a quick fix. Like, there's this whole get rich quick scheme, get famous, quick. I want to be like Gary Vee. I want to be Grant Cardone. I want to be this. I want to be that. And I think that that's really dangerous. I mean, I understand that people aspire to be like those people, and that's fantastic. What I don't understand is that, this notion around wanting to be famous. I think that's where we're in a world where a lot of people really desperately want fame. And you see that a lot on social media platforms, this notion around influencers, which is ridiculous, really, because most of them aren't influencing anybody. But the reality is that we have this get rich quick mindset, instant gratification. And in the work that I do, it actually is quite intense. There's a lot of moving parts that you need to unpack, you need to define, you need to implement. And the next piece of the puzzle has to glue to the first part of the puzzle. And there's all these moving parts. And when it's done right, it works. But there are a lot of moving parts, and it takes patience. You have to do a lot of testing. There's a lot of refining along the way. And you have to be prepared with the feedback that you get when you test to actually be able to have an agile mindset. And that's in the work that I do. You have to be prepared to move all the time. And I don't think people are prepared to do that, Lee. I think that what they really want is, I want to be famous. I want to be labeled an influencer because that gives me some gravitas. I don't know what it gives people. But it's just, it's actually quite sad.
Pretty
In
sure
fact,
they just label themselves as influencers.
I think so, Alex. I think that a lot of it is self-proclaimed, and I always ask people, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Like, that's a really big question. And I think that when people, label themselves as influencers, I always look at actually who is their circle of influence, and that will pretty much tell you almost immediately who they're really influencing. And yeah, it's interesting.
It's really interesting the things that people do to try to be an influencer too, because you talk about wanting to be like Gary Vee or wanting to be like Tony Robbins or any of those guys, and I always find it hilarious because those guys got to where they were by not being anybody else.
Right.
They
Exactly.
literally took all this work to go and brand themselves, build a relatable and personal brand focused on expanding in social media. They did it, and then now the way that they're monetizing that is they're selling it to you as a get rich quick scheme. Like, you're buying into what you're fed through a feeding tube instead of using what is most important about you, which is your creativity and your individuality, what makes you special, to really build what you have. So
And
I just think it's a ridiculous thing, man.
it is. And the other thing is that what's important about what you just said is that, you can't copy what somebody is, because what in the space that I work, I won't work with people that actually don't have some type of like real expertise. And what you find is, I can't tell you how many people come to me that want to be famous or an influencer, or, they just want to do keynote speaking and be on stage. That's their dream, to be on stage, which is really sad. And the space that I work in is that you have to have some level of specialization. I am looking for people who literally do have that 10,000 hour, 15,000 hour rule. They meet that benchmark, because then I've got stock to work with. I look at that as inventory. I can work with somebody when they actually have knowledge and wisdom and processes. They've got a narrative that you can unpack that's so compelling. And that for me is I look at that as inventory. It's a great starting point.
It is. Now, let's talk a little bit about then how you define that expertise, because a lot of our viewers that are watching are in one of two areas. They're either just starting out, and so a lot of times we're giving them tips on how to, get their business started, how to go about starting the branding process, relating with your audience, getting clients, that sort of thing. But then we also have some more experienced entrepreneurs who have grown and scaled a business, are in the process of scaling, and are just kind of in the weeds. So what can you tell us about what that looks like for those that are approaching that point? How do they know that they're getting to the point where they have that expertise? What are you looking for, and what advice could you give about building and solidifying that?
That's a great question, Alex. I think where we're at the moment is, and I think COVID has created an opportunity for a lot of people in business, and also a lot of people that are wanting to start their own business. For me, what I'm looking for is the problem that somebody can solve. That's my starting point. If I asked, any one of my clients, or a prospect for that matter, before they even become a client, if they can't solve a complex problem, I really can't help them position themselves as an authority, or somebody that wants to own a piece of a niche or an industry. And it's a really important starting point that when you know that you can solve a problem, and you're clear on what that problem looks like, we're already halfway there as far as I'm concerned. Because the next part is understanding, is there an industry or a tribe of people or a niche that actually have that problem and they need it solved? So I want to give you an example that I think is so ripe right now, and there's a lot of senior executives that are unfortunately finding themselves out of a job. And I specifically say senior because I'm talking here around the 50 plus age group, and they're not senior, but they're in senior positions in a corporate, or were in senior positions. Now let's look at this scenario for a moment. These people have had 20, maybe even 30 years of experience in an industry. They hold a lot of IP, a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom. They have processes, which is the great thing about corporate, is that you do learn a lot of processes. Now, a lot of these guys are looking for a job. They've been made redundant. They're back in the job queue looking to replace that title. Now, two things have happened. One is that IP has been removed out of the corporate, so there's a void. And two, that person actually holds some incredible currency that has huge value. And the question is, can that IP solve a problem? And if it can, there is an industry that will need that problem solved, because there are senior people that have been removed from their environment, from those corporations, and somebody needs to go back in there and help solve that problem. So there's this. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. We just had a question come in from the audience that I was going to highlight, but also just wanted to ask, because when I, and this might just be me being a little bit younger here, of course, but when I think of senior executives getting displaced, I think of senior executives getting displaced because they're no longer valuable to the organization, or really contributing enough to the value add or the bottom line, or they're just so expensive that they're sucking down resources, and that it would be better for the corporation to staff a younger associate or a sharper associate, somebody sooner out of college that has that new, fresh mentality to really move that organization forward. So what would you say to, if I guess my argument for that would just be that, yes, they are removing these senior executives, and I'm sure that they do have a purpose somewhere, But what if their purpose isn't really there anymore? I mean, what if they're
Well,
there with like COBOL programming? That's not even a thing anymore. So they might have some old infrastructure terminal experience and understand how that works. But does that mean that it's really necessarily going to translate into value add for another organization?
well, that's not my space. I don't specialize in what their purpose is in an organization. What I'm talking about is when they're displaced and they're out of the organization, that human being, regardless of whether they had value in the organization or not, that person actually holds on to currency. And and the question is, what do you do with that currency? So if that person, what the position that I'm coming from is that person has an opportunity to package that knowledge and that wisdom and the processes that they've learned and then go back into corporate as a consultant now, not as an employee, as a consultant that can solve a problem. So they still can fulfill a void back in multiple organizations, most likely quadruple their salary that they were making in corporate, but also they're just focusing on that one specific area that they can solve. So there is a huge opportunity for those type of people to be able to start thinking beyond a job title, beyond looking for a job to replace what they once had. There is opportunity for any person who actually does meet that 10,000 hour rule to be able to go down this pathway. Now, let's just look at the other side of the coin. A coach and or a consultant that has been in business for the last 5, 10, 15 years, and they're selling time for money. I was on the phone with somebody last night and they're still on that model. They were talking to me about billing hours. That is a foreign word to me. I don't understand what that means. And the reason I don't understand what that means is because I don't sell time. I sell a solution.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very big difference, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not selling what my hourly rate. I'm selling you a solution. And when you buy my solution, you buy a start and an end promise. And in between that, you get a system that you follow and you implement along the way to get to the end goal.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. It's relatively succinct. And now we did have a question come in earlier about niches, and this is something that we talk about a lot. Hannah says, what about the fear of niching down? I think that's a wonderful question. I
do too.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think
For example, in technology, I've gone a very anti-niche route because I've found that the problem that I can solve is just helping businesses generate revenue and save time. It's very multifaceted and encompasses a lot, but it solves a big and critical problem for every organization. So instead of niching down towards a certain vertical, I've just niched down in that who I help and who I'm able to actually serve. Now, do you consider that a niche? And then also, what do you say to niching down in general and making that decision to specialize your business or your offering?
The reason why we niche down is because we can create language very specific to an audience that we're targeting. And when you can use tribal language, you're then 100% relatable. Okay, that's just common sense, marketing 101, right? So that is the starting point. I don't believe you can serve everybody. It's just not possible to just, you run yourself thin. And I get this all the time. So when I work with people, they want to go broad. I want to help this person. I want to help this person. And they get lost in the whole process because they can't generate the leads that they want. They can't attract the attention that they want because they are too broad. You are much better off speaking the language of a specific niche and at least testing it. And if that niche is not responding, then actually either broaden it or, look at another niche. A guy that I was talking to the other day, he said that his niche in recruitment is recruiting pilots, specifically pilots. And then he said, but actually my niche is not pilots. My niche is aviation. Okay, so now he's in the same industry, same tribal language, but he's just expanded that niche to aviation because under aviation falls innovation, manufacturing, logistics. There's a whole plethora of opportunity under the banner of aviation. So niching down is really important. I have a client who is what I would consider, she's in a micro niche. But because she's in a micro niche, and she, one client for her is valued at $300,000 to $500,000. One client, so she only needs 1 or 2 clients per year to have a really awesome business. So when she uses specific language and targeting that specific niche, what happens? She is seen, she is heard, and she attracts the right people, which then convert to leads. And she's generating leads on LinkedIn because of that mindset. So I am a big advocate of niching. In fact, I actually am a big advocate of micro niching because it just solidifies what you do, who you serve, and what you can promise. And you use the right language to speak to your audience, not at your audience, to your audience. You're starting a conversation with your audience from a like-minded zone. That's what you're actually doing.
Yeah, I can definitely see that being very beneficial to someone, especially when you're not able to learn everything anymore and really
Exactly.
kind of take on the world, or you don't have a big enough team. Because something like Google, for example, Google doesn't have a niche because they don't need to have a niche. Their niche is just technology as a whole, and they can do whatever the hell they want because they have the manpower to be able to get that done. And I think that's another one of the differentiators when it comes to niching down, is focusing on that is still a short-term thing. As you grow and scale your organization, you need to develop other channels of revenue that are going to come in, so you're not just relying on one specific thing. Because what if that market crashes? Like, you know, copywriters who are focused specifically on, I don't know, auctioneers. I do copywriting just for auctioneers, and everybody, we're going to do a little bit of copywriting here, and it's going to be for an auctioneer. We're going to go once, going twice, sold for $300, and you can't do that anymore because of COVID. And then you're able to pivot and you're able to use that expertise. So from what I hear with you in niching down, we're really just speaking the same language, identifying that channel and getting that channel on lock, being an expert in that channel, knowing your customers, knowing what problem you're solving, and being able to actually articulate that in a way that the person that you're talking to and that you're reaching, that ideal client, is going to hear that and they're going to resonate with that, and they're going to know that you can solve their problem. Because
Exactly.
I've always said that no one cares about what you do. They only care about what you're going to do for them. They only care about what they get out of that whole transaction. And when you can really get that feeling across, because buying's an emotional experience, when you can get that feeling across, is very valuable. So and I know we had a couple of other comments, and I guess I was addressing those in a backhand way, but like Brianna, and hello Brianna, thank you for joining us, by the way. She said that I worry if I don't niche down, I look unprofessional. Mary and Lee, what do you think about that? Because Lee, I know that you also fill a specific niche, although it's not as wide as aviation. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Oh, okay. Well, to me, I do hear people come to me, they say, "Oh, I'm a generalist. I'm a generalist." This, I mean, and not even a generalist copywriter, but just like a generalist entrepreneur, and that always makes me go, "Okay, well, what does that mean?" Oh, anything you need me to do, I'll do it. Okay, like jump off a bridge, set yourself on fire. I don't know, tip over a truck. What? You know, like no, things like, you know, like online things, tech things or something. Okay, well, what? You know, and it's like, I as a non-tech person in that example, I don't know what I don't know. And so when you come to me, tell me, you've got to be able to tell me that, because, you know, you need to be able to solve my specific problem. Whereas if you're just like, hey, I'm tech and I do that, you know, then I'm not going to know if I need you or not, and confused minds say what?
No,
No.
confused minds say no.
That's
I've learned a lot from Lee, so I'm always excited when I hear these things.
9999999.
that.
I know you've got a confused mind if they're saying that.
I believe that you can excel in multiple niches. I would have a heck of a time wanting to work with you if you were not niche down in some capacity. Now, my niche in copywriting isn't necessarily coaches, although I work with a lot of coaches, or consultants. I work with a lot of consultants.
I think Gary just totally stole it on your approach.
Okay, consider distinguishing. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. You know,
Yeah.
my niche is people who agree with me. And
Who agrees
thankfully,
with you, Lee?
there's enough people out there, huh?
Who agrees with you? How would you define them?
If you're aligned with my philosophy, which is counter to that of the guru mentality, which hands down the templates from on high and says this is the way things are done, go forth and do them, and then nobody makes any damn money.
Yep.
Yep.
I
But
am the
it's
opposite.
$19 a month, Lee. Come on.
No, it's 20. Yeah. Well, but see, I'm 27 and they can't take a handle that. Somebody goes and dumps $1,000 on AWAY from profits and happiness, and then they don't have $27 to spend on a membership to actually do it right. So those are the kind of people I love.
The people that really don't care about you, but they try to pretend that they do, remember their conscious language. Everyone says things for a reason. And if they say, I care about you and I'm wishing your family well in this time, and then go into a sales pitch, you can anticipate that they care about you as much as a shit stain on a piece of cardboard on the side of a street. Remember that.
It's about time we turned this show rowdy again. We've been tame for at least 10 minutes or so.
Oh, yeah, we did good.
All right. Well, I've done my little rant on that. What about you, Mary?
Oh, I think, Lee, I agree with you. I think this whole Brianna's, I love Brianna's question. I'm worried if I don't niche down, I look unprofessional. And I actually agree with that. This notion around, being a generalist, I actually think that takes you nowhere. That's just being a part of the noise. And
Right.
I think that when we talk about niching, really what we're talking about is how do you actually have the capacity to rise above the white noise? So somebody that's utilizing social media to be seen and be heard, how do you actually stand out from the crowd if you're just having the same conversation about everybody? Let's look at my example with personal branding. Every second person on LinkedIn is a personal branding specialist. Like, honestly, it's every second post is, how to define your personal brand, 10 tips to stand out with your personal brand. It's, how to be authentic, because that's personal
That's
branding.
something you can teach, of course.
So the point being is that, that's noise. That is all noise. And the way that I like to rise above the noise with what I do is really just, first of all, give value, because I like to always make sure that I'm challenging someone's paradigm, or I'm making them think a lot deeper after they've read my post or watched my video. But also the value that I give in terms of the free content, my free masterclasses and
Wait,
all
you
of
give
it.
free content? Why would you do that, Mary? You can charge $19 a month like all the gurus.
Exactly. I could, Alex. I could actually charge a lot more.
Oh,
but
yeah.
But what does that show you? It
Bingo.
shows that I am not frightened of giving away that level of quality content, and there's two reasons for that. One is because I know my shit for sure. That's number one. Number two is that when somebody watches that masterclass or downloads my workbook, I want them, regardless if they're a customer, if they become a customer or not. But what is my goal? I want that human being to have an ecstatic Mary Henderson brand experience. That's my goal. That's my goal. Because even if they don't buy from me, they've become my brand ambassador. And that's what I'm after. And in personal branding, this is a critical part of the puzzle. So why would I want to be a part of the white noise? All of those people that are creating white noise, I had this conversation with somebody yesterday. Whilst all these people, influencers, are making all of these noise and they're talking about how incredible their personal brand is, I am quietly in the background building my client list. I'm generating leads. I'm generating qualified leads that are booking in my system so I can have a real life conversation and talk about how I can solve my problem. Now, that is what personal brands have the capacity to do. They can have the capacity to get people on a phone to have a mature conversation so that they can discuss how to solve a problem.
And I think it's also important to note there that in no way did you have to go out and get that business from, posting on LinkedIn or Facebook or doing anything else. Once you have that, that's where, and I consider that a professional brand. So
Yeah.
the personal brand, when you yourself can be that personalized brand, but when your business becomes that professionalized brand that people can
Yeah.
go to, it's kind of like in the competitive circuit of like gaming esports, the real professional players, you never can even see in a public match. They're not in the white noise. The white noise is not fun. Who wants to play with a bunch of people who probably don't play with thumbs? It's not enjoyable to anyone. So all of the professionals are in the private matches. They're at the LAN tournaments. You're not even going to get to that level on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram because that's not where your market is.
Yeah, that's a
You
great
like
analogy.
you don't want to associate with them, I like when I go on Facebook, I don't want to get sucked in. I don't want to go on Facebook anymore. It's boring, it's annoying. And
Yeah.
that's how you know you're starting to get that transition. And that's what
Exactly.
you're aiming for. And that building that brand, that's why you have to be so active and so vocal about things because you have to learn how to speak your language because
Correct.
that language is so much
Which
different.
is why a niche is so important.
Yeah,
Yes.
because you can't speak a language if you don't know who you're talking to. How many
Correct.
languages are there in the world? So I
I don't
gotta have
know
a
how
niche.
many are there.
I'm sure you could do a quick Google search and figure that out.
How many are there, Alex?
I'll
That's a
tell you
great
what, why
search.
don't you look that up while I have everyone enjoy this clip of a man.
65,000. 6,500.
Well, we're doing it anyway.
6,500.
I'm already on it. We're doing
6,500
the clip.
languages. What?
Roughly spoken in the world today.
Wow.
Yeah, that's actually lower than I thought, even. I mean, I know I can only think of maybe 4 or 5, but with all the
I was
different...
going to say, like, maybe 70. Wow.
No, 6,500.
Jeez.
Sorry, Lee, you can interrupt us again. I just wanted to see if I could search faster than we were able to get the banner up.
You shtick blocked me.
I did shtick block you. Sorry for blocking your shtick.
While I regain my composure, please enjoy this clip of a man contemplating a life of erectile dysfunction. What
That was
way
not
to
a
bring
good
down the
thought.
house.
Was there something wrong with his eyes?
I don't know. Yeah, possibly. I don't know. Maybe he didn't like having someone staring at him with a camera. Who knows? At least not for my benefit anyway.
And Brianna asks another great question too. By the way, awesome questions, Brianna. Thank you very much. She says, if I niche down, can you develop a good business culture? Of course, niche. If you niche down, can you develop a good business culture? Now, business culture, Brianna, I'm going to assume that you mean company culture, like within internal culture. If you mean external brand, like what my customers view of me, versus the actual internal culture of the organization. So let me know if that's what you meant, that opposite side, but I'm going to take that as internally. So Mary, if you do niche down, is that going to help you build the culture of your business?
Well, let's look at two sides to this coin here. There's personal branding and there's corporate branding. They're two different things. They're both businesses, okay? A corporate brand is a business and a personal brand is a business. In an organization, there should be individual personal brands who should be positioning themselves as specialists, not as job titles, and really, really massaging that specialization that they want to own within the organization and also external to the organization. This is actually how you future-proof your career. This is in my mind, I just can't believe that, a lot of people don't get this concept. This is how I started in personal branding 20 years ago. I understood that concept. But if you have a business that you own and you have staff in that business and you're building your brand, your personal brand as the go-to person in a niche or an industry, but you also have a corporate brand, the internal culture, in my opinion, should actually be around creating a culture of specialists, lots of personal brands, not job titles or job descriptions. Job titles are so limiting. They give you the 9 to 5 version of a person. Bring in the whole person. Understand what each individual looks like as a 24-hour version of themselves. What skill sets do they have outside of 9 to 5 that can be transferable within the organization? You will start to create a culture of happy people. Why? Because people will come to work because they can be themselves.
But
That's
how do you do that? How do you, and not to cut you off, but what I hear is the most brilliant thing that I have ever heard. But I do know that in corporate, people hate their freaking lives. They just
yeah,
want job security. Think about the entry level jobs. You don't
yeah,
want to do a real lot of thought power in this. You don't want to go to the work of creating
yeah,
your own actual brand. Because we talked about in the beginning, everybody wants to be very Gary V on stage. Nobody
yeah,
wants to be Gary V. You don't want to be Rocky beating the freaking pig to get ready for the fight. You want to be Rocky chaining at the gym with the cameras on. I
correct.
personally don't. I'd much rather be in a meat locker, but that's just me. So, how do you do that? How do you really encourage and inspire that type of attitude of being a lifelong learner and also going and getting after it? And as leaders, how can we empower our associates
This
to do
needs to
things
be
like that?
this needs to be a mindset, from top down, and the mindset is that we want to build an organization made up of an ecosystem, of an intelligent ecosystem. So every human being in that organization brings to the table some level of intelligence and IP. They have skill sets, they have passions. There's a whole heap of aspects to a human being that they bring to the table. Could you imagine, just think of this for a moment, Alex, just imagine that you have a 9 to 5 job, let's just say in marketing, but you actually, to your point, like most people, they actually dread the thought of waking up at 7 in the morning, getting on public transport and actually going to the office. By the time they get to the office with the Starbucks coffee, they're worn out. The day's already
Hmm.
over. Now,
Yeah.
could you imagine if that person was allowed to share their passion, which happened to be that they have a YouTube channel because their passion is cooking. They love it.
Yeah.
At 5 o'clock, their focus is getting on the train, getting home, putting the camera in the kitchen, creating something, putting it up uploading it on YouTube, because they could spend hours doing that. Let's take that example, for example. Now we look at the corporate environment. Would it be of value to the marketing department if Johnny could bring that skill set and understanding of social media, because he's experiencing it every day, to the marketing department, where the marketing manager is textbook savvy but not experiential savvy? Would that skill set be of value to the organization?
It would
And
be, but
right,
how does the organization get to the point that they can know that skill set? And I'll give
it's
you an
culture.
example.
Well, no. This is all about culture. We've got to transition from sitting down with Alex and saying, right, Alex, let's talk about your KPIs and let's
Hmm.
see if you've met those KPIs. That is school. That's the school system in the corporate environment. We
Right.
have to get rid of that. We need to be sitting with our people, and what we need to be doing is tapping into passion. We need to be tapping into the heart of every individual, and that should be the starting point. Of course, you've got a skill set to get that job. Why would you be in a marketing job if you didn't have the skill set to begin with? We shouldn't
Right.
be asking questions about skills around, oh, do you understand how to use Excel? And what about Word? Do you know how to use Outlook?
I don't know. I mean, that does undercover passions. Like, for example, I can teach Excel how to read and use the internet and stuff. Like, I use Excel for back-end automation to process things. So, with something like that, asking people where their actual skills, like hardcore technological skills, are
There's
is very
technical skills and there's
beneficial.
soft skills. So we've got to, there's two different things. You're
Hmm.
talking about technical skills. Of course, you've got technical skills, because that's the thing, Alex. You see, that's what you get asked in an interview. It's always based on technical skills. When I mean technical, I mean hard skills. We are
Hmm.
never, ever asked about soft skills. They might ask you, oh, what are your hobbies?
Right.
Don't ask me about my hobbies. Ask me really about my passion. Now let's look at someone that's a triathlete. That's a passion. That's actually a hardcore passion for
Mhm.
most people that are in that space. But there are so many skills that come with that passion. I want to know about those skills. I want to know that you understand teamwork. I want to know that you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning because you understand the power of commitment and consistency. There's the skills right there. That's
My
leadership
commitment
right there.
is at least waking up at 1 p.m., if not later, every day.
What did you say? Your what?
I said my commitment is at least waking up at like 1 p.m. or later every day. It's just a joke. It's
I'm
okay.
gonna forge new and wondrous things upside your head.
It happens.
Yeah,
But
of course.
I think these are really good. Like they're really good points. But it's one thing to say let's change the culture, and it's another thing to change the culture. And we all know that in corporate environments, cultural
hard.
change, even if it's coming from the top down, you still have funnels of information, you still have
Yeah.
silos of information, you still have problems within the organization that are not going to get solved overnight. So how do we embrace that mentality? How do you encourage that from the top down? How do you do that leading by example? And then when you are doing that, let's say you have somebody coming into the marketing department, and are you saying that we really shouldn't be focusing at all on hard skills? Because I feel like those are incredibly important
No,
things.
you've got to have the balance, Alex. You've got to have the balance.
Yeah,
It's
but
critical.
okay. So how do we do that?
Well, the hard skills is why you get the job to begin with. So that's a given. I'm focusing here more on the soft skills that, by the way, if you read all of the white papers out, World Economic Forum, Deloitte's just released a white paper, all of the big four consulting firms, they're all saying that, by 2022, the most important skill set that you must have are soft skills, emotional intelligence, complex problem solving, creativity. These are skill sets that need to be on the CV. So
Yeah.
it's not a matter of culture. This is a matter of human beings wanting to change. The position that I come from when I talk about all of this is that if you want to future-proof your career, you have to start thinking like a business. You can't think like an employee. And when you look at it, when you break down a business, you can see that there are a lot of attributes in a business that I should be thinking exactly the same. When I'm selling myself in a job interview, I should be selling myself as a business. This is what I do. These are the problems I can solve. These are my, this is the solution that I can bring to the table. These are the processes I know how to design. And this is the specialization that I really have been focusing on. And it's my niche within this industry. That's what we need to be doing. We don't have to be a little bit of everything. Just because I'm a marketing manager or a VP of marketing, it doesn't mean that I need to be a little bit of everything. I can actually position myself as a specialist in, social media, in particularly LinkedIn and Instagram. That's my specialization. I've grown my profile. I have a following. I understand this space. So we need to be niching down even as employees and really understanding that to actually stay in the game, it's not about having technical skills. What it is about understanding how do you niche down and what problem can you really solve and stay in that lane and be known in the marketplace as that go-to person for that thing, which means you have to be seen and be heard where social media comes into it, like LinkedIn. Lots of opportunity on LinkedIn. We need to be smart and position ourselves on LinkedIn by creating awesome content that has huge value, but also it brings the organization into it. How do you do that? Easy. You hashtag the company you work for and you honor it and you acknowledge it, because what it is that you do, it also adds massive value to the organization that you're working for. And we need to also understand from a leadership perspective that people in your organization that are doing this Just remember that people buy from people. People are not buying from your corporate brand. They're buying from Mary because they love what Mary stands for. They love Mary's value system. They love the value that Mary brings on a social media platform, and they want to connect with Mary for that reason. They're not buying the product because of the corporate brand. They're buying it because the connection that they have with a human being that works in that organization.
Yeah, that's an excellent description of how, like, just sales in general. I like it. It's good to talk about. So with and when that comes into personal branding, how, because you're talking about niching down, but then also creating like social media content. Not everybody is meant for that, you know.
Yeah.
Not everybody's meant for content creation. Not everybody's meant to be on camera. Not everybody is meant to, you know, not everybody is meant to be a rocket engineer, right? So we
Yeah.
all have different skill sets. So how do we look at capitalizing those in that unique way? Or is your approach more focused on your niche is the ones who do niche, if that makes sense, and the ones who can do those things that you can teach?
Yeah, I think that, you're absolutely right. Standing in front of the camera is not for everybody. Not everybody can write like Lee. I can't do what Lee does. I just write in my own way. But my strength is not writing. My strength is the video. Like, I love being on video. I find that really, really comfortable. Now, in corporate or not corporate, doesn't matter who you are, anyone that's wanting to build their profile as a brand needs to find where their needs to understand their natural state and work with that, not go against that. So, for example, let's just look at somebody that's a technical person. A lot of tech people that I've worked with, coming a software development company, a lot of those guys are introverted. There is no way that any of the guys that I employed would be standing in front of the camera. God forbid. But what they were brilliant at is, if I asked them to write, some form of documentation or anything that could be published in an industry journal, they thrive in that space. So the key is to understand what your natural state looks like and work with that, not go against that. And therefore you will find the right medium that suits your persona, so that when you're in front of the camera, it flows. When you're writing, it flows, because that's your natural state of being. And it's as simple as that. There's no complication. There's no science around this. It's just common sense. If I'm not in front of the camera, how many times have you seen the influencers, on social media tell other people, just get out there and tell your story. You've got the opportunity to tell your story. Well, there's a big problem with that. The good news is that person does actually break the mold, and they get onto social media. Little steps go a long way. I get that. But for most people, being in front of a camera is actually not their natural state. You can see that, and
But isn't that a skill that we need to work on?
Well, not necessarily. We don't have to all be in front of a camera. We can write. I don't need to be in
digital
front of a
workspaces. There might be. I mean, team collaboration, department meetings. That's still, you're still in front of a camera, not necessarily in a sales aspect. But
I'm talking about social media and personal brands here. I'm not talking about the workplace.
Gotcha.
So the workplace is not my area. That's not my expertise, right?
We started to talk corporate, so I just went corporate.
No. My area is working with human beings. I'm only interested in working with a human being. If it happens to be in corporate, it's corporate. But most of the people that I work with, they've left corporate. They've said goodbye to corporate. They're ready to transition, and actually build a consulting or a coaching business. Now, even with those people that I work with, if their natural state is not video, why would I put them in front of video? It just doesn't make sense. What they need to be doing is working in their natural state. When you can be in your natural state, you will thrive, you will be seen, you will be heard, and you will be taken seriously, because people relate to that. And the other thing, an important point to make here is also that, how does your niche want to consume content? Do they like video? Do they like content? For example, Lee is a writer. Okay, I've used Lee for my as I've engaged Lee for work. He's done some amazing work, for my sales page and things of that nature. But I connect with Lee because of the way that he writes. I want to see that he can write. I don't care about him on video. That doesn't tell me that his skill set, that doesn't sell me his skill set. I need to see words so that I can connect and say, that's the sort of style I want in my sale, that's the sort of person I want to write my sales page. So that's in context. Do you see what I mean?
I do see what you mean.
Great.
Yeah, no, it's like exactly just using people to their fullest potential, what they're good
Yeah.
at. I mean, it's very, very simple. It's all, I mean, all the things that we're talking about are really just steps along the journey, business, and not get lost in all the fuzz along the way. Because there's way more people that suck at what you do than are good at what you do. So
Yeah.
once you start passing those ranks and start climbing and getting your name out there and becoming more of an authority, that's all you got to do. Get visible.
I agree.
Whether that's writing or posting on Reddit or doing your TikToks or, you know, being on lives on LinkedIn or, you know, building streaming servers, whatever your thing is, like, you're good. And it's awesome that you have that, you know, that message and that ability to help people with that. And we had what was the question earlier? Brianna had said she meant more branding and standing out from the rest. So then when people think of your business, they automatically know how they will be treated and dealt with. They automatically know what your product is and how it will affect them. So what was that? I was trying to get her 2 questions because they were like back to back. I'm going to put them together. So if you niche down, you can create a good business culture. And by business culture, she meant the branding and standing out as the culture that the outside consumers are relating with your business.
Yeah, so this is an awesome question, because one of the things that I've been able to establish, and I'm also incredibly passionate about, this is what I teach my clients, is that when you're on social media, you need to have your own brand signature. And for me, I can't tell you how many people say to me, Mary, when I see hot pink in my feed, I know it's you. And I stop and I'll read or I'll listen. I know I'm in for a treat, somebody said to me the other day. So I've already programmed the people that like my content that when they see pink, to expect something from me. So this all comes under the branding palette, and I go through this pretty full-on process to actually understand how I want the outside world to perceive me. And there are moving parts that are associated here. But one for me is the color, that color, which is hot pink, which is consistent across all of my communication touch points, that wherever you see Mary Henderson, you will see hot pink, because that's my corporate color. And there are many other things that go with that, but you've got to start training your audience what to expect from you. And I remember I mentioned before that when I actually create my lead magnets, so those free masterclasses, what they do is they give the viewer or the prospect the opportunity to see what my approach, my style, my passion, the way that I articulate myself, the processes, the way I articulate the processes. At the end of that session, that 1 hour and 10-minute masterclass, they've had an experience with me. They understand what I do. They understand how I can help them. They understand, and most of them take copious amounts of notes, but I've given them a brand experience. So all these communication touch points have to be consistent in terms of what is it that you want that person to walk away with? What feelings do you want that person to walk away with? And that's really what we need to be focusing on.
Yeah, and kind of like we had talked earlier, how buying is always an emotional experience. You're buying from somebody. You can't do that unless you're creating that emotion and that brand around it. So it can be literally anything. You know, your style, who you are, is what you define on the internet. And thankfully, you can kind of change that and create that whenever you want, which I always find fascinating. But we are coming up to 5:19, which means we are getting to final thoughts. But we're having an awesome conversation, so I say we'll go into overtime for a minute.
Yeah.
Why not?
And I'm just kind of scrolling back up through here. I know that Gabriel had asked about content creation. me go back to that. So, how do you make content creation? This is the one we'll end on. Let's go through this. So, what advice can you give us, Mary, on creating personally branded content? I heard the hot pink, getting that brand color. What other advice can you give us on how to create that brand and to really make that resonate?
Well, I think that we need to look at how people, how strategic and deliberate you want to be on social media. And if you look at my content, it's strategic and it's deliberate. There is no mistake that whatever you see from Mary, in my post today is all strategic and deliberate. It's been well thought through. I have a schedule. I know exactly what I'm posting today and tomorrow and Friday because I have a schedule. I already know my goals at the end of that week, but it's actually more than that. It's not just about the content. It's who are you creating the content for? So it's, and my strategy, for example, on LinkedIn, there's two parts to the coin. There's the content and there's the people I connect with. And both of those are the same. It's the same coin, just two different sides. But they are perfect. They have a perfect marriage when done right. So there's no point in just creating any type of content. We need to take people on a journey when we're creating content. We need to get them to know us. We need to get them to like us. We need to get them to trust us. And that process requires different type of content. It's a different type of content approach with a different type of feeling that you want that person to experience at the end of that content. So content is not just random. It really needs to be thought through. When we're staying, and also I always talk about staying in your lane. I get criticized about this a lot, but I'm staying with that because the fact is it works. When you stay in your lane and you talk about categories that are 100% related to your lane, what do you think will happen? People will start noticing you as the go-to person. Now, Lee doesn't divert from his specialization. I know that when he posts, it all comes back to what he does. I already know that. I'm not surprised. He's not talking about fish or the ocean or, flowers, or he might do it in a story, telling a story to get a point across, but he's not actually now talking about, today I want to talk about my other interest, which is, I don't know, popcorn or something. I don't know why I said that. I just thought of that.
Yeah.
But it's deliberate. I know exactly what I'm in for. And the same thing with me. It's all deliberate. You know what you're in for. I won't give you anything outside of my specialization. I don't need to do that. I'm comfortable staying there. I don't need to divert from that. I don't need to introduce you to my children, to my husband, to my animals. I don't need to do that. And I don't want to do that. I just want to stay in my lane and be very, very specific.
And I think that that's definitely a very measurable strategy for growth.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the questions that came through was, don't you worry that your schedule and strategy limits the possibility of randomly hitting on something that is gold? And of course, because the whole point is not being random, you might hit gold, sure, or you could come up shit for luck the entire time. But if you do it this way and you take these steps that we know work, it is not a formula. It's not a magical get rich overnight. It is this is how you connect with people. This is how you build. This is how you relate. And then you go after that gold. You go digging for gold and you know where it is, so you know you will find gold instead of hoping you find gold. Would you rather dig in a gold mine, or would you rather just dig in a random spot in the earth, like go out in the desert and grab a shovel, hope you find something? No, you're not going to get gold.
Yeah. And the thing is, Alex, but I think the question we need to ask ourselves is, what is the purpose of actually being on a platform like LinkedIn to begin with? Because if your purpose is just to get likes, that's awesome. Create whatever you like, no problem. But that's not my purpose, so we have to be very clear on our purpose first and foremost. Once we understand what that purpose is like, the next step is, okay, so now what do I want to be known for? And then, you go through the process. So random content to me means that I'm just on social media for the sake of being on social media. I just don't have the time to be on social media for the sake of being on social media.
Correct. I don't
Right.
think anyone does have time to just scroll around on social
Yeah.
media. And if you do, please let me know.
I want
'Cause
to chime
ain't
in
got
on
stuff
this
that
one
needs
if you
done.
guys don't mind.
Please do.
Well, you know, Mary, you mentioned that you know what you're in for with my content. You know that it's very deliberate. And at the same to Kier's point, I don't write in advance. I've tried to write a week in advance. It doesn't work. What flows out of my hands generally flows out of my hands. But I have a schedule of purpose. So every day I post, every post, I know what I want to accomplish with that post.
Exactly.
I may not exactly have the words there to deploy to make it happen because a lot of that happens in the moment,
Yep.
but the purpose is there. And then once you have that purpose, you could reverse engineer the post
I
and
agree.
actually infuse creativity into it. So I do a little different process than you do, but it achieves essentially the same result because there is that structure and intention there.
Exactly. But you're in your lane. That's my point. The point is how you do it, that's your business, but you're in your lane. I know what I'm in for when I'm reading your post. And when I read your post, Lee, I actually read it from beginning to end. And I have a laugh. Like, I always have a laugh. And I made a comment yesterday. I absolutely cracked up. But isn't that interesting that you have the capacity to do that? That's moving a human because you say things in your post that I can relate to. And I related to something that you said in your post and I just cracked up laughing, and so that's a very, very powerful way of promoting what it is that you can do so effortlessly. That's your gift. That's your genius.
So that makes total sense that, for someone who is putting their focus and energy in another area of brilliance, that it might make sense for them to have posts ready a week in advance or 2 weeks in advance, even if it's with the caveat of if I wake up one day and I'm feeling like I want to create I've got something on my heart that's still going to fulfill this purpose for today, fine, scrap it, we'll use it later.
Exactly.
There's a big deal on that. I mean, and personally, this is thank you, Alex, for turning onto this. The Rocket Book's one of my favorite tools because if I have ideas for posts in the middle of the night or whatever, then that it's there and I can flesh it out in the morning.
Yeah.
So I love how you teach that it has to be purposeful because we're creating too much content. There's too much out there anyway, and more than any of us could ever possibly consume, even if we wanted to. Which is why, to your point that it has to be deliberate, that it has to be intentional, and that it has to do its job as efficiently as possible.
Exactly. That's my view.
Very cool. All right, well, we are going to have to wrap this up here in a few minutes here, so I suggest that we move on to final thoughts if you're not already on top of that, Mr. Alex.
I will be in about 2 seconds.
You will be. Well, I mean, whoever finds the banner first, I guess.
I don't know where it is.
Electra's Way. I know. That's because I did the banners. You know what happens when
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh boy. Okay, you guys know the deal. It's time for final thoughts. You get 60 seconds, a minute and a half, or however long you would like to be on center screen and leave our audience with a lasting impression. Mary, as our esteemed guest, you will be on the clock, and we'll go probably clockwise, counterclockwise, don't know. Anyways, we'll go ahead and put you up and have some fun.
So am I supposed to be saying something? Sorry.
Just your final thoughts, what you want to leave the audience with.
I think that with personal branding, the most important thing that you can do is be really clear about who you are in your natural state. That actually is the starting point, and be comfortable with that. We don't need to be anybody else. We already have a genius zone inside of us. That genius zone exists. It needs to be unpacked. And that process of unpacking will give you an understanding of who you are, what your gifts are, what your passions are, and also what your skill set is. When you can start to see what that actually looks like, the next part is to ask yourself, can I solve a problem based on this? And if the answer is yes, Then the next part of the process is to start to package all of that together in a solution, understand who needs that solution, and start building a brand around that. And not just a brand, but a business around that. And in my space, when I'm converting personal brands into commercial and commercializing it, typically we would digitize their knowledge into an online environment or an offline environment, because it matches the problem that they can solve. And the final part is understand what your lane actually looks like when you start putting yourself out there on social media. That is a really critical part of the puzzle. If you want to be seen and you want to be heard, you have to have clarity around what you do. So hopefully that helps you guys. And please reach out if you want any more questions answered. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Mary. I appreciate it. As always, it's great to have guests, and you are incredible. Personal branding is so much fun to talk about, and just branding growth in general. And we know you know your stuff, and that's very important. So, Mr. Rowley, would you like to go next?
I can do that.
There you are.
All right. Well, thank you. It's good to be back. I always enjoy these shows, and on the days I'm live streaming, I think I'm just kind of shaking and feeding like a junkie. So it's always great to have these conversations. And Mary, thank you so much for joining us. Really what BowtieUP means. It's my personal lexicon for bringing your own excellence and brilliance. And, that's what this show is all about, is helping people tap into their own excellence. And we all do it in our unique way. But I think, as you say, once we're aligned and with our purpose, that doesn't only help humanity, doesn't just help you. It feels good when your passion and your energy are aligned. It's called, we call it being in the zone. You can call it whatever you want. What are you doing?
Me?
Yes.
I'm not doing anything.
Anyway, so my personal call to action always is bow tie up. Bring your own brilliance. As I told Carla Sunday morning, I was running around in hobo gear, and I just was feeling just down. And I put on a bow tie, and she said, "It's the weekend. You're putting on a bow tie." And I said, "Look, sometimes you got to get dapper to get your mood out the crapper." So that's what I say. You bow tie up, you get your mood out the crapper, and you make that brilliance shine.
And that's what I've been doing too, is bow tying up and getting my mood out of the crapper. So hello, it's time for final thoughts with Alex. I have now successfully imported myself into a character animator. So in case you're wondering why I'm doing up and down, I'm doing everything I normally do, and it's being fed through my camera. So cool tech thing for the day. Anyways, all of you phenomenal people, thank you so much for turning in. Always appreciate it. It's great to hang out. We're all here to help. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to any of us. And please connect with our guest, Miss Mary Henderson, on LinkedIn. Remember to be a better person today than you were yesterday, and to keep moving forward, and we'll be all right. Thanks for bow tying up live with us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Awesome.
guys.